Hi, I'm David Gregg, the director of the Rhode Island Natural History Survey, and you're watching the September 2024 meeting of the Rhode Island Woodland Partnership. This meeting featured a presentation by Lisa Hayden and Hayden Stebbins from the New England Forestry Foundation. They were presenting a grant-funded project they're calling GROH for Grow Resilience in Oak Hickory Forests. Their perspective is one that favors a certain kind of forest management that takes continued or increased production of wood and wood products from forests for granted, more or less. Some of their points are that leaving forests alone doesn't guarantee they'll achieve theoretically higher carbon uptake or storage, especially given climate instability. Our civilization needs to continue to produce wood products, and the alternative to production may not be protection without some financial return for forest landowners. But Lisa and Hayden make some well-reasoned points. It is vital to do whatever you do in forests as ecologically sensitively as possible, regardless of your perspective. You'll also learn a bit about the New England Forestry Foundation, a multi-state land trust focusing on forests. So give it a watch, and then research others' perspectives. I'll put some links in the description down below. The Rhode Island Natural History Survey presents videos to showcase the animals, plants, geology, and natural systems that surround us, and the people and organizations working to understand and conserve them.
Aha! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the September meeting of the Rhode Island Woodland Partnership. We are very excited to be joined by our friends Hayden Stebbins, the Southern New England Program Forester, and Lisa Hayden, the Outreach Director from the New England Forestry Foundation, to talk about the Climate Smart Commodity Grant Program. We are going to get going by doing a brief round of introductions so that everybody can get to know who everybody else is on the call. And then we will turn this over to Hayden and Lisa. So I'll start. My name is Kate Sales. I am the co-coordinator of the Rhode Island Woodland Partnership and also the executive director of the Rhode Island Land Trust Council. And I'm going to pass it to Scott Roran.
Hi, Scott Roran, Director of Conservation at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island.
Mark, why don't you go?
Hi, Mark Tremblay. I'm a consulting forester representing RIFCO, which is the Rhode Island Forest Conservators Organization. I met both Lisa and Hayden recently at the RIFCO demonstration woodlot. Welcome to our meeting.
Pass it on.
David Gregg.
Hi, everybody. I'm David Gregg. I'm the director of the Rhode Island Natural History Survey.
Christopher, why don't you go?
Sure. Christopher Riley, have a forestry extension role with the University of Rhode Island. Do a lot of work in partnership with NRCS. Also have my practice, Sweet Birch Consulting. And I will, I'll throw it over to Paul.
Paul Dolan, Director of the Rhode Island Resource Conservation Development Council and the coordinator for the Enviathon. Bob Varia.
Bob Varia, excuse me, Rhode Island Wood excuse me, Rhode Island Wood Operators Organization and Varia Tree Service. Let me see, Melissa.
Hello, Melissa Hayden. I'm a biologist with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service in Rhode Island. I'll pass it to Paul.
Greetings, everybody. Paul Rosselli, president of the All Volunteer Private Land Trust in the town of Barrowville. We're not connected with the town government. And I'll pass it to Mr. Stebbins.
All right, I'm Hayden Stebbins. I'm the Southern New England Program Forester for New England Forestry Foundation. And I'm here to tell you guys a little bit about our Climate Smart Commodity Grant and see how we can get it going in Rhode Island. I'll pass it to Lisa Hayden.
Hi, Lisa Hayden. I'm Outreach Director at New England Forestry Foundation, and you'll be hearing a little more from me later, so I'll stop there.
Caleb, why don't you go?
Caleb Grant. I'm the owner and operator of Macy's Tree Farm. We're a small, environmentally sustainable, forestry-minded arborist and milling company. And I've done some work with NRCS and other folks on this group, but I'm interested about, today's today's meeting, and I'm glad to be here because I've been too busy to be on a bunch of meetings. So it's nice to see everyone.
Ian, why don't we hear from you next?
Hello, my name's Ian. I'm a wildlife technician. I've been doing a survey of Albro Woods, and I'm very interested to hear what you all have to say.
Doug, you're up.
Hi, I'm Doug. I'm the owner of This Old Tree, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Good intros, everybody. So now we're going to turn the presentation over to Hayden and Lisa. They're going to come and talk to us about the Climate Smart Commodity Grant that they are working on. This program will pay woodland owners, foresters, and loggers to implement forestry practices to increase forest adaptability to climate change. So Hayden and Lisa, please feel free to take it away. You should both have the ability to share your screen. I'm just going to double check.
Yeah, I just hit share and it said ask a request or something. So I
Try
hit
again.
that.
I just changed it.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
That's okay. Here we go. I think I got the right thing. Layout and share. Okay. All right. Can you see that now?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Let's go to the beginning. Okay. Is the box blocking anything or does that look okay? All right, cool. All right, well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for inviting us to join you today to talk about this new program. And as mentioned, I'm Director of Outreach at NEF, where I've worked since 2014 and done a lot with landowner outreach and education with different grant programs. And have worked a little bit with Christopher and Kate in the past when we had an outreach grant to pay foresters to meet with landowners to begin to talk about climate change vulnerability and adaptation on their properties. And there were other grants helping to do bird-friendly habitat assessments and that kind of thing. So we worked a little bit together in the past to try to line up different programs for landowners. But today we're here to focus on a new grant that NEF has in the Climate Smart Forest Partnership. And I thought I would give a little background about NEF since we don't do a lot of work in Rhode Island. We haven't historically, and we don't have any conserved properties there yet. You'll see on the map in a little bit. So we would love to have a conserved forest in Rhode Island though. So I'm happy to keep talking and thinking about that if there are landowners who might be interested in that at some point in the future. But if you're not familiar, NEF has been around since 1944. We basically operate as a regional land trust, multi-state land trust. We do accept easements, conservation easements from private landowners and annually monitor those. We support having a forest management for the properties, but there's no requirement for folks to manage if they don't want to, and that program. And we do have a large conservation footprint throughout the region, but we focus on education, helping people understand the benefits of sustainable forestry and how it's important for our lifestyles in New England. And then here is the map. This may not be quite the latest one, but this is basically showing where our conserved fee lands are, as well as conservation easements. And we do have about 150 community forests throughout the region. We have some very large conservation easements up in Maine. But on the fee lands, we do actively manage those sites. We work with foresters to have 10-year forest management plans, which talk about specific prescriptions for different aspects of those properties, and prioritizing wildlife habitat, and all those sites are open for passive recreation, for trails. Some of them have more developed trails than others, but they are all open to the public. Okay, so to focus a little bit in on this current program, the USDA had put forth this opportunity for climate smart commodities, which includes both agriculture and forestry projects. And NEF was really excited to receive a $30 million grant. We've been in the design phase kind of over this past year and have really launched the first active parts of the project up in Maine with commercial landowners through an RFP process that started this spring and into summer. And now we're getting into the details of the working with smaller acreage woodland owners, specifically in the southern New England part of the region. But the grant includes several different aspects. It's incentives for implementing climate smart forestry on the ground. There's a whole program piece looking at market development and expansion. And we ended up focusing on one particular segment, that being mass timber, and to be applied for the need for affordable housing in New England. And some of our colleagues are really focused on that stream of work, connecting with architects and building engineers and so forth, and trying to make connections to have mass timber, actually be used for construction in our New England region. Another aspect is monitoring, verification, and reporting of the climate benefits of all this work. And then this really does mesh with NEF's bigger vision and long-range goals to help New England meet our climate goals overall. And we see there's a big potential to meet as much as 30% of our carbon reduction goals if we apply exemplary forestry and these kind of climate smart practices across the 6-state region. This is just a little snapshot of some other aspects of the grant. We do have a lot of partners across New England, including landowners, foresters, and loggers. We're kind of working with 3 large groups of audience members, the large commercial owners, which just happen to be based in Maine, where those companies are, small private woodlots, which we're going to talk a little bit more about today, First Nations or tribal owners, and those are mostly in Maine as well. But there's also funding for incentives for foresters and loggers as well to be implementing these practices. And then a lot of other activities, as you can see here, modeling, et cetera, that need to happen. And so, of course, this work is all framed about this huge climate challenge that we're all facing. And we're seeing these impacts play out, it seems, almost on a daily basis now with, wildfires in the West and storms and sea level rise and a lot of impacts that we're really beginning to see. And so we think our work really has an important role to play. And this slide just focuses a little bit on some of the global work looking at the importance of how we address climate change in many different ways, and trying to improve our business as usual approaches in society and really how we do everything. And this 2022 study here was from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. And the headline to that work was, "We need to protect, manage, and restore nature's ability to sequester and store carbon." And so this program is really aimed at that thinking. And then the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, in its 2019 study, emphasizes that same point about the optimal role that forests can play. And the quote on the bottom there focuses on how a sustainable forest management strategy aimed at maintaining or increasing forest carbon stocks while also maintaining a yield of timber and fiber is really one of the best long-term strategies that we can be pursuing. And so there's, of course, this, when we're talking about climate change, we're trying to address both mitigation, so using forests to store carbon, and also, their ability to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere as part of the solution. But we also, of course, need to be thinking about adaptation and keeping all of our ecosystems as healthy as possible as all this rapid change is going on. And so part of this work is framed around the idea that without successful adaptation, the carbon sink that our forests provide, may not necessarily be a permanent one. And so, we're seeking to address that, to try to implement practices that will help our forest to be resilient and bounce back from disruptions, which some of them are unexpected and kind of unpredictable at this point, but we're working to try to accommodate that. And then this slide is, again, looking a little bit at NEF's kind of climate goals writ large. And we see, it's a combination of things. We need to be taking a systems approach in how we take care of our forests through this climate age. And these are some of the different strategies here. We need to have more conservation, so no net loss of forests basically across the landscape. Replacing steel and concrete where we can with bio-based or wood products. There's a climate benefit there. The idea of storing more carbon in the city, so that's kind of the mass timber idea, how we're actually, when wood is harvested, it still stores carbon. So that's another avenue for, as we build the buildings and places to live that society needs, being conscious of the embodied carbon in all of that work. And then that big piece there on the chart, the big slice of spreading exemplary forestry, is really a big opportunity to spread these climate smart practices and gain climate benefits through that work. And this is just the forest to cities idea, again, of storing carbon in our buildings that we know we're going to need to build a lot more of to meet human needs. And then focusing on adaptation, because this is what you're going to be hearing from Hayden more about, the practices for the southern New England region really are focusing on resiliency. And so this is just a definition of adaptation, which is adjusting systems in preparation for or in response to climate change. And so a lot of the things that we're doing with sustainable management, conservation, and restoration are seeking to address that goal. And as we begin to think about the private woodland owner audience and how we can support them in being a part of all these solutions, we've been learning about how to talk to woodland owners about climate change. And as we all know, climate change can still be a controversial topic in some places and with some people. And so we try to recognize that people are coming from different perspectives, perhaps, on that. And while our organization really feels this is a major problem we need to be addressing, maybe not everybody in the world agrees with that. So we do try to find common ground as, we advise foresters as they go out and meet with landowners to help them identify changes they're seeing in the woods already. And, this is a way to start a conversation and help support adopting practices that can be supportive of that property and in decreasing its vulnerability. And of course, we're seeing some of those impacts all the time. Damage from storms and extreme weather, washouts, and a lot of erosion from heavy rain events, seasonal changes with early bud break, and maybe having a frost that then sets the trees back. And more drought stress and more of that happening in New England in recent years. So I think Hayden's going to touch a little bit more on this, but we're getting to planning our first forester training for what we think we're going to be calling the GROH program, or Growing Resilience in the Oak Hickory Forest. And this is focused on the southern New England states of NEF's grant. But we're working with NIACS, the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, and some of you may have heard of them, but they're an arm of the Forest Service, which has been a great science partner for NEF in past grants. And they have a lot of online resources, so we're going to be steering foresters to try to complete some of that basic training, basically, about climate change as a first step. And then we're designing our first forester training as we speak and hoping to actually get that scheduled this fall if possible. And Hayden's probably going to talk a little bit more about that. But it will include some field components and refresher about climate vulnerabilities of our forests, and also kind of just an overview of this grant program and what we're going to be asking of foresters in order to participate with it. Of course, I think you all know in this group the important role that our private woodland owners play, not just in climate change, but just in ongoing care of our forests and the future of our landscape. And we do have, about 215,000 of these folks across New England who own 10 acres or more. I know in New England, the parcel size is a little smaller, and so maybe it's more 10 or less, but all of these folks are important in guiding the future of our landscape. And we think it's important to be reaching out to them with this message about how we can all respond to climate change and providing them support to make good decisions on their land for the future. And we know, of course, landowners have a whole array of goals and perspectives about their land, why they own it, and what they'd like to achieve there. And so part of this work as we start to do outreach for this grant is identifying those goals and helping them to connect with the resources to meet them. And so, not everybody is actively managing, but some folks need financial resources, so that's a perspective that we can try to connect them with programs like this. And of course, we have other goals on here, gauging interest in climate change. I think there is a component of landowners that are interested in that and wants to learn more. Others have more traditional goals for recreation and wildlife habitat, et cetera. But we always try to help connect folks, even if they're not a fit for our program, where we can refer them to get other information and resources. And so we do have an outreach budget for this grant, and we'll be getting to that as after the program design is final. But we fully expect to be hosting events, and we'll be looking maybe to partner with some of you on hosting walks or forums and other venues where landowners can learn more about this opportunity and other funding opportunities that are current. We may do mailings and that kind of thing if we need to, but I think first we're going to be reaching out to folks that we've been in touch with before in the Southern New England region. Of course, developing resources for foresters, as I mentioned, learning from some of our past work in the MassCon area, for example, where we did forester outreach to woodland owners before. We are partnering with the Family Forest Carbon Program that American Forest Foundation sponsors. But we've learned that their program is really addressing more northern New England woodland owners, and they're not serving the Oak Hickory Forest. So that's where we have, NEF has decided to pilot a separate program with different practices specifically for Connecticut, Rhode Island, and the parts of Massachusetts that aren't really fitting into the Family Forest Carbon Program. So that's the piece that we're going to be focusing on the most today. I have a bullet point here about, equity too. USDA, I think, is really focusing on underserved woodland owners now, and there are different categories that they've defined. People who are new to their land ownership within the last decade, folks from underserved communities, Indigenous peoples, people who meet certain income requirements. And we'll be looking for ways to help support people who fall into these categories as well. And probably we'll be giving preference to people who self-identify to meeting some of these groups in our application materials. And then again, just obviously referring folks to where we can to help, meet their needs and attain their goals for their land. And again, hoping that we can talk more in the future with you all about maybe exemplary landowners in Rhode Island who you all have worked with in the past who would be open to hosting a walk on their land. And of course, as we actually get to funding practices, maybe identifying some of those sites where we can host programs together, and look forward to talking more about that with you all. And I'm going to leave it there. And I hope I didn't go on too long, but I know Hayden's going to dig into some more details about the practices and other aspects of the program. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm gonna go ahead and share. So I was thinking about this a little bit as a kind of a roundtable presentation, because we're still in some of the process of creating this program. We've got our practices pretty well nailed down, but some of the rollout, we have some questions about some other aspects of the grant, and we want to kind of bring you all as Rhode Island potential participants into the foray, especially as we don't have as much experience in Rhode Island. So when we were going around about defining our practices, the main thing we wanted to focus on were practices that were uneconomical. So we don't want to just be subsidizing practices that would already be happening, because that just that's not really doing anything new. So we want to make sure that we're doing practices that would not have happened without this grant. We really wanted to address forest health issues and management issues that exist on the ground that would not have otherwise been touched. And we also want to try to create future wood products. So one of the aspects of this grant is to kind of bring more forests into creating long-lived carbon products that can kind of help justify the carbon accounting with managing forests.
Hayden, I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, I do see like there's for
How's
me, a block on the right side. I don't know.
Sorry about that. I guess that's just yeah, there we go. Is that better? Is it
Okay,
still
that's
there?
better. Yep, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think it kind of like blacks out the elements of Zoom that are on my screen. So sorry about that. So one of the first practices we're hoping to subsidize are slash walls. We had the opportunity to come down and with Christopher Riley and visit some of the RIFCO slash walls. And yeah, so we're looking to see if there's any planned harvests that would could use some deer exclusion. It was pretty stark to see the difference between areas inside the slash wall and outside the slash wall, and how much quicker that regeneration was coming in, and also just the diversity of trees that you're getting in there versus outside of the slash wall. That will, of course, involve a certain size of property. So I know that Rhode Island is, we're working generally with a little bit smaller landowners. But yeah, if there is a harvest that's large enough that could justify, or that could provide the slash for creating slash walls, it's something that we want to work with. Fixing high grades, so trying to find places where all of the, where diameter limit harvests have come in. So the idea is that these forests are not, the growing space is not going towards good quality trees that can potentially produce timber in the future, or even kind of good trees that we would want to be the growing stock for the future forest. So going in, conducting a shelter wood harvest, or creating larger gaps and allowing kind of better growing stock to come in and fill that space. Another issue we heard about, I'm not sure how common this is, but if there is a forest that's been thinned from below, where all the understory species have been taken out, and you only have left prime growing stock in the canopy, we want to kind of help encourage that diversity to come back. We want to open up some growing space, because if you just have a single age stand with nothing else, you are losing your species diversity, you're losing your structural diversity, and we want to make sure, in the name of resilience and kind of climate adaptation, that we have diversity of species and age classes across the landscape. This one is one that we're probably going to try to have a lot of acreage under. This would be going in and basically hand thinning birch dominated stands at an early stem exclusion. So these are usually around 3-4 inch diameter, and going in by hand, cleaning a space around 8 feet around anything that's not a birch, or if there is a birch, trying to find a birch that's over 4 inches that doesn't have nectaria on it. So you're creating better growing stock for the future, and you're putting more of that growing space towards the trees that are going to be there. So you're accelerating the rate that forest can put on carbon, and then also ideally creating good quality timber for the future. This one, Oldfield pine release, again, working on diversifying monotypic forests. So if there are well-formed pines, or if there's anything that's not a pine within these Oldfield pine stands, trying to release those trees, creating just a healthier forest for the future. This one we need to think of a little bit more, because we're really trying to avoid leakage in this. We don't want to pay people to leave trees that are just going to be harvested elsewhere for timber. So we're thinking one of the issues that we are running into with this is that this grant is only going for about 3.5 to 4 more years. So we don't currently have the ability to follow up and make sure that these trees are still in the forest. So the last thing we want to do is pay to have somebody leave this in a harvest and then come back 5 years from now and harvest that. So we need to figure that out. We also need to make sure that we're we also need to make sure that these trees that we're paying to get left would not just be left anyway. So we're thinking about certain, size restrictions, perhaps doing some cavity trees, maybe going into looking at sugar bushes and paying by the tap for sugar bushes to leave like 25% non-maple species. But if you guys have any input on this, that'd be great. If you have any input on any of this, we'd love to hear back from you, because we obviously don't know everything that's going on in the landscape, and we're looking to this. We're looking to the foresters to also bring us ideas. And this one's just classic crown thinning. So if you have an even age, high density stand, this one might be more geared towards smaller landowners where a crown thinning wouldn't be able to carry a sale. And we could provide some funds to kind of bridge that gap to make economic sense for a logger to go in there, take out some of the UGS, and just create a better, healthier stand with more growing space for better trees. And then this one is, open-ended. We didn't want to limit our practices to just what we thought was important. So if there are any practices that a forest or any stands that a forester thinks should be treated, they can tell us what the stand situation is, what the treatment they would do would be, and then what their target is for post-treatment. So I'm going to pause there, and if there's any feedback that you all have from your experience at Rhode Island, perhaps something that I've missed, something that we should really be thinking about, or any thoughts that you might have on these practices. I'm going to take like a couple minutes just for feedback on that, and then I can kind of go through the rest of this and see what we think about that.
I had a question about the things that you mentioned so far were about sort of focusing on post-harvest, sort of fixing things that should have been done better, or whatever, all related to harvest. I'm wondering whether those are applicable to, or if there's something else that would be applicable to large stands that have died from beech leaf disease. So
Right.
like regenerating forests with shelter, with slash walls, but where the initial wipeout was disease.
Yeah, so that you're good to pick up on that. I should have tried to include that. I've been looking at Eli Ward, who is I forget exactly what her title is, but I think she's like the forest health forester for the state of Connecticut. And they put together a beech leaf disease practice with a grant that they want to implement across New England to see how beech leaf disease treatments, silvicultural treatments affect beech stands. And some of that is kind of shelter wood. Some of it is spraying some of the stump sprouts and root sprouts. So definitely including some of that. I just saw that looked through that yesterday. So I'll probably include a beech leaf disease specific thing in these practices. And that's also where, if a forester does have a stand that's a unique condition, they can come to us with a prescription that they think might fit that.
Hayden, if I could get that from you, I can share it with the group.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'll have to double check with Eli to make sure that I think it's still in draft form.
If it's okay.
Yeah,
That would be
yeah.
really helpful. Thanks.
Hayden, any thought about some of these other practices that speak to the resiliency thing, like tree and shrub establishment, or instead of slash walls, small fencing of small clumps of hardwood, regeneration in within any kind of previous harvest area,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. First, to fix my speech, Mark was the one who showed us the slash wall. So Mark, thank you for doing that. Yeah, in terms of deer fencing, that seemed to be one of the more expensive practices that we could have implemented. And also with fencing, there's a lot of follow-up that needs to happen in terms of making sure that a tree hasn't fallen on that or anything like that. So we tried to avoid practices that need more long-term monitoring, even though forestry in essence is long-term. We had to exclude some practices that were a little bit more hands-on because we don't have the funds currently with this grant to do follow-up. So unfortunately, we don't. We are looking to stack funds. So if there are any like state funds that are available for invasive species control or for deer exclusion or anything like that, definitely looking to hear from anybody if they know of those kinds of things. But as of now, we haven't looked into that specific thing.
But I wasn't referring to, large scale deer fencing, the traditional large
Exclusion.
area exclusions. I'm talking about just, small 6-10 foot wide that seems to be more cheaper and less expensive and perhaps effective way of protecting clumps of regeneration scattered throughout the understory, where you just fence in 6 to 10 foot wide little encirclements of clumps of regeneration. If you can do enough of those, a few per acre, it'll actually give you enough seedlings for the future. And I'm wondering, as tied into the resiliency, like the project that Christopher is doing down at the preserve, the Hillsdale Preserve, is doing the supplemental plantings and tree protection and that sort of thing. I know you went to visit that, and I wonder if anything came out of that.
Yeah, we haven't we haven't gone for any of that smaller tree protection or anything like that, simply because of the cost per acre. Not that it's not valid and important, but just for this grant, that didn't seem to fit with what we're doing. And when you're saying these smaller exclosures, are you thinking within a gap, or you're thinking just kind of in the understory to?
Or within a gap,
Okay.
yeah, 2 or 3 acre gap. And, I'm writing these things in as part of a tree and shrub establishment practice through NRCS. And it's not, slash walls aren't cheap.
No, not at all.
And you've seen the costs probably through the Cornell site, what the cost factors are, and you've got to have a lot of material. So it's not suitable for a lot of sites. And especially you're talking about small woodlots. Maybe these, somebody's got a 2 acre patch cut and, they want to string 10 or 20 of these little exclosures around clumps of existing regeneration. That might be an option.
Yeah, that's definitely something I can consider. And maybe that's like maybe I have like a subset list for that kind of ideas that foresters want to submit that I can also provide, that if people do see this as suitable, they can do that, because you only need a few trees to make it to the canopy for your forest. If you're only protecting that makes sense. Christopher, I see you have your hand up.
So I believe that you're looking to sort of work with or stack, but not duplicate practices that NRCS provides. And we have Melissa Hayden from NRCS here, and I know that what NRCS can do for establishing or protecting forest, regeneration. I think NRCS will protect planted trees and seedlings, but not natural ones. Is that right, Melissa? Right?
Yeah.
Maybe this could be worth a conversation.
Yeah, Christopher, the reason for that is that it's the fencing, the exclosure fencing is sort of built into some of our scenarios for tree and shrub establishment. So you have to actually plant some trees and shrubs, and then we can do the tree protection around those. But yeah, it's not typically used just by itself to prevent regeneration. That's sort of happening on its own.
So perhaps would that be an area that the NEF program could, might, focus on, if it can legitimately, there's, the research shows that it can help, really get regeneration up, towards the canopy?
Yeah, that's also, if that's a practice, if the tree and shrub establishment is something that NRCS already provides, then maybe that's kind of a stack, because it wouldn't be under the same NRCS code. So if we're doing like a 666 code, maybe we could also help the landowner navigate NRCS so that they can get tree and shrub establishment. So maybe that wouldn't have to be both things we wouldn't have to do, but they can also get that funding for putting those within gaps. And that seems like that could be a good way of blending funds.
Thanks for clarifying that, Melissa. I wasn't aware that it wasn't a primary practice. It's a supporting practice.
We definitely use it mostly as a supporting practice for our tree and shrub establishment. That isn't to say, though, that we don't have deer exclusion fencing under our fence practice 382, that you could plan that separate from a tree and shrub establishment practice. It's just not one that we use I don't think I've ever seen it installed in Rhode Island.
Well-
Because it is so expensive. Under 382, the specs are really rigorous and rigid for what that fence needs to look like. It's like an 8 to 10 foot high permanent post, so I think that's probably why we don't use it.
So how about as a scenario under a CSP enhancement that I've written into somebody's plan just recently? I wasn't aware. I was hoping that they'd be able to protect some clumps of natural regeneration through that as an enhancement practice.
What was the enhancement, like a 612 enhancement, like a tree shrub
Yeah.
establishment? Yeah, I think that would work. As long as
Okay,
you're
but-
doing some planting like along with it. And so you would be, if you were planning a 612 enhancement, there would be some planting, I think,
Yeah.
associated with that.
Okay, it's the whole pairing it with planting that makes it interesting, because now that opens up an opportunity for an F to cost share, just the protection part of it without putting in a big, heavy duty fence all the way around a 5-acre area
Yeah.
or a slash wall around a 10-acre area. That in itself, just, promoting, providing deer protection for, a minimum of 20 or 30 oaks per acre or something like that, just I think would be of use. It's not expensive. People can do it themselves. They don't have to hire a fencing company to come in and do the project. 3 posts and, a 10-foot circumference section of fencing.
And Mark, have you done, like, so one of the things I'm trying to conceptualize here is pricing. Have you done this, and would I be able to reach out?
Well,
to you
I've
for pricing this?
I've seen it done where people have planted wildlife shrubs and then went ahead and protected it with clump fencing like that. Yes.
Okay.
We did something like that at Norman Bird Sanctuary when we planted native plants after invasive removal. And it's sort of like we were looking for something that was intermediate between tree tubes and a 5-acre, Fort Knox
Yeah.
deer fence.
Right.
And deer are, much less, much more reluctant to jump into a 10 or 15 foot diameter
But they can't
fence. Even if
jump
it's only
out.
4 or 5 feet high, they won't jump in. And you can just carry it out into the woods. 2 people can carry it out into the woods and set it down and stake it down, and it worked pretty well. I mean, it did what we wanted it to do. Yeah.
Mark and David, could I reach out to you guys after this to try to get pricing for some of that stuff?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think the person I'm thinking of, I'm sure would be willing to help.
Okay, that'd be great.
have-
Kate? Oh,
Yeah, we have
go
a
ahead.
question from Kate Markey in the
Yeah.
chat. She wants to hop in with a question or a comment.
Go for it, Kate.
Hi, I think I'm unmuted. I've never joined by phone before.
You're
but,
good.
We
You're
can
good.
hear you.
So my comment wasn't about what Mark was saying, but I have to wholeheartedly agree with Mark on that. Also, the selfish part of it's something very tangible for landowners. Even as a field forester now, going to the slash wall up in Oakham, Massachusetts, the differences on either side aren't that drastic yet. There's really nothing hugely measurable unless you're a forester, but I think with the smaller exclusions, not only can the landowners do it, but they can be very more involved in the process, and I think people would be very, very shocked at how many trees could grow, and that gives a little bit more. So yeah, I didn't expect to say all that, but I wholeheartedly agree. Andrew Randoza from Mass Audubon has all the numbers on the smaller deer exposures.
Okay, and Kate, do you know how long ago that slash wall in Oakham was put in?
Oakham, I honestly don't. I was out of the industry for a few years. So maybe it was like a 2019, 2020 project, but I have a lot of capacity to misspeak about it.
Okay, because the one that I saw in Rhode Island was 4 years old, Mark, I want to say, and that was, I mean, even if you weren't a forester, it was stark.
Oh, I gotta
inside
go
and
see that.
outside.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would
So
be helpful.
yeah, I mean, maybe I should check in that Oakham one because I don't want to misrepresent anything, but it has seemed like pretty noticeable, just even just height wise.
Okay, perfect. Because again, we're just not seeing that with the model that I've been bringing landowners to. Because I do have a lot of landowners interested. It's just they typically last minute say, I haven't had anybody jump yet to do it. But I guess I was kind of going to the legacy tree retention. I find that on the Massachusetts plan, some of my legacy tree, because that's something they fund, can be a little not typical because what I'm using is the Nature Conservancy maps. So an example would be a large land trust. I know this isn't in the zone, but in Charlemont, Mass, because they have such a cold microclimate along this really important cold water stream, in that little cold pocket, we're using a lot of hemlock as a retention tree, which you typically wouldn't, but across the state when compared to every place else, their hemlocks might persist that much longer. So I guess that tends to be where, yeah, I just find that legacy trees, and it's not just the hemlock, if it's just such a well-suited site, there's just the capacity for the legacy trees to continue that much longer. Or for landowners to understand there's some big concepts around this, but it's so site specific, and the whole purpose of bringing in the legacy tree was to convince these large landowners we are not wiping out all your hemlock in this lot. It's premature. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good to hear that. Yeah, there's good hemlocks there. And I think also in the Northeast, I think hemlocks will stick around a little bit more than in our more southern places, even with hemlock woolly adelgid.
But with the Massachusetts Legacy Tree Program, that's what I'm hearing from the landowners who originally want it. Well, what do I do if this happens? What do I do if that happens? And that's what taught me to kind of step back and say, you know what, you're a New Braintree. You're not in the most resilient place. Maybe legacy tree isn't the most important thing to do on this acreage. And then just not falling in line with what you guys don't want to see is when landowners are interested in the legacy tree program, they're often the first to say, well, what about that place in the back we'll never get to?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, this is all great stuff. But I'm sorry, I also just ran in from the woods. I am so exhausted and don't think I'm clearly speaking, but I'll follow up with comments too.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you, Kate. It's Lisa Hayden.
Oh, hi,
Been a
Lisa.
while. Yeah. See ya.
Thank you.
Caleb, I saw you had your hand up. I don't want to call you out if you don't have a question anymore, but.
No, I just was, I believe it already got emphasized well. I was going to say I'm not doing it as part of a NRCS equip program, but in terms of being compensated for it, but as part of the work that I'm doing, I'm also, I am trying to establish some natives with just tiny deer cages, and kind of just, piggybacking on what everybody else has said, but it can be a really, even when I bring groups of kids through the woods, even just as coppice tree examples, like I put some cages around one, some of the trees that we're clearing, and just from an education standpoint, it is really helpful. I agree with all the policy pieces above that, but that's the only point I was going to make, is just that it's surprising how effective of a tool that is for small stand work. And I own 23 acres. I'm working to try and connect with partners and maybe donate that 23 to create something larger. But just as a 23-acre lot, it's a huge eye-opener to have this little, I mean, it might be 8 feet around. I got them actually from David, but they're like these little, deer cages. And you can put it over a section of forest. A kid will walk by who knows nothing about trees, and they'll say, hey, why is that, just overflowing? And you can see where the deer are nibbling at anything that's poking out of the cage. It's a helpful tool. That's all I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher.
One of the things, we have, in Rhode Island is across southern New England is that, there are, fair number of, natural, forests that might be, urban parks or, lying, in municipalities in the urban area. And I was wondering if they, those kinds of woodlands might be or might not be eligible for this program. This would be, typically the non-harvest related practices, but often there are issues with forest health and regeneration, and we're trying to get some of those landowners to consider actively managing their woodlands more.
Yeah, I mean, if there's practice that well, Lisa, I'll let you speak to whether municipality could take it or not.
Yeah, well, I think it's still an open question, but so these would be city or town owned parks, or I guess some of them could be private too, right? Or does it depend?
I think municipal and land trust as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we've determined land trusts are eligible for this grant funding. Municipalities were trying to ascertain that still. We sort of have asked the question and got kind of well, what exactly do they want to do? So we're still feeling that out. But if you have a specific property that you think would benefit for what we're offering, we can ask and see. Yeah.
To Todd, I love that point, Kristen. Just to add on just for a second, that I know some municipalities and even governments are transferring forests or plots of land back to Indigenous ownership, and I know you flagged underrepresented ownership as being a priority. So just to flag that, I think urban and or recently transferred would be a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, I think in terms of touching on urban forestry is not a whole nother thing, but I think just the invasive species pressure is so great within there that if we were to try to open up the canopy, I could see places where it's just like, oaks and then Norway maple. And I would love to see a crown thinning where you're taking out the Norway maple, encouraging oaks, but I would hate to see then bittersweet come up and just take that around. So I think I would be open so first order of operations, if we are to definitely, if we are to be able to give this funds for municipal projects, that would be great. And then in terms of the municipal projects, I would just want to be very careful to make sure that we're able to get longer term, hands on the ground there to make sure that we're not just creating a worse problem or opening up growing space for everything else that we don't want in there to come in. I think that'd be great. And I think it's a great thing to do. And in terms of, underserved populations, I feel like maybe it wouldn't fit the USDA definition, but a lot of those parks could be in areas that could use a hand. So definitely an interesting idea, and I'd love to continue that thought, but we're kind of a little hamstrung in terms of what we can do with the funds. That seems to be the big question.
Thanks.
Yep. All right, so I'm gonna push forward a little bit and keep going with some of the other aspects of this grant. Let me just share my screen again. Oh, where did that go? So let me get this screen. So stacking practices. This is something we have our practices that we could put in, but we're hearing a lot about invasive species treatment. We haven't gone for invasive species treatment in these funds because there are some availability of funds in other states. I'm not sure about Rhode Island. If you know of funds that are available for invasive species treatment, we would love to put that on top of these practices, or if there's deer exclusion funds. That's something that we're trying to slowly build our storefront of what's available. How can we, put the funds in to make sure that this forest gets the best treatment possible. We're not just putting one practice in to create another kind of whack-a-mole problem. So if you have any ideas of what else we can use to make these treatments more effective, all ears over here. We will be doing a training for foresters. So we want to work with foresters who have gone through our training. They're going to be the ones that are reaching out to landowners. They're going to help us with these plans. They're going to be doing the actual, the follow through with a lot of this work. So NIAX has put together a one-day online training for us. They've right now, we're going to be doing a smaller training with some foresters that we've already worked with at Great Mountain Forest. But if you are interested in that, please reach out. We'd love to have as many people, working on this as soon as we can. That training is going to be coming up in October, most likely, and we're hoping to roll out this grant in November. So we're really working quickly. It's going to be a little bit of a crescendo where we'll probably be working with people we've already worked with before, kind of getting our engine going, and then we'll expand from there. We're also going to try to get continuing education units for these trainings, so will be a little bit more of an enticement for people to come and go through the training. In terms of making sure that we're doing what we want to do and that we also end up with what we want, I'm going to be coming out to the site to just double check to make sure that the site is the kind of stand that we're looking for. And then after the treatment, I'll be coming back out and doing an audit of the conditions that are on the ground. If we do end up working with a forester that's bringing us multiple projects, I will probably be able to step back a little bit from them. So hopefully that will incentivize foresters to bring in more landowners with this. It'll be easier the more we can work with familiar faces on this. Payments, this is something that we're still working out a little bit, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this. So one idea is it's simpler just to pay the landowner, reimburse them for what they paid to the forester and the log owner and the loggers. I'm going to be working with 100 to 200 different landowners, and I'm going to have to bring them through the CPA 52 process, all the kind of federal standards that we have to go through. So that creates a lot of work on my end. So just timing wise, if we could just work with one person to refund them, that'd be great. The other side of that is that we've heard from Connecticut that some of their they're having a little bit of a hard time getting some landowners to do some projects because of that out-of-pocket cost. So the other side is if we paid loggers and foresters directly, we would avoid landowners having to pay out of their own pocket, which could help us get more people involved in this program. So we're leaning towards that. If you have any experience with either of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your experience on that. But that's kind of where we're thinking in terms of this. We're also looking for underserved landowners. So if people who fall into any of these groups, if you have connections to any groups of landowners that might be interested in this, or any groups that just would fit these categories, definitely want to try to work with them. One of the goals of this grant, at least in a lot of our minds, is to bring forestry, bring forest management to lands and people who haven't historically been working their forests and kind of managing their forests for forest health, for timber, things like that. So we really want to expand the footprint of what we can do with forest management, because we have so many health and disease and climate related issues coming forward. We really are hoping to get more more foresters working with more land so that we can be better prepared for what's coming in the future. And the last thing, we have to work with a lot of CPA 52. So every landowner will have to do a farm and tract number, and all the projects will have to go through a CPA 52. So if you know anybody who was an NRCS employee in Massachusetts, Connecticut, or Rhode Island, we're hoping to contract out a forester or just a former NRCS employee who's familiar with the process, so that they can help shepherd that CPA 52 process through. That would allow me to be able to focus on some of the things that I can do with the grant. And it'll also make it a lot easier of a process for the landowners, so that they don't get tripped up on a lot of questions or kind of like not caught, but hung up on something that is a mistake. This seems to be something that is a challenge for CSC grants across the nation. Seems like it's one of the bottlenecks. So it takes a while for this to get through NRCS office. It's about a month, a little more than a month. So anything we can do to expedite this process would really help getting these funds on the ground as quick as we can. So that's all I have. I want to open up the conversation now, and thank you all for listening to me.
Hayden, I may have mentioned this before, but I would 100% reach out to the conservation districts who cannot fully do a CPA 52, but can get it to the end for review and approval. Having done lots of them.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good point. And I know conservation districts are, different levels of capacity in different states. So Rhode Island is pretty robust.
I think
relatively.
there are some transitions right now, but I think that there are lots of planners or district staff that are capable of helping with that. So if you want the contact information for those managers, I'm happy to reach out.
yeah, that would be great. I'll follow up on that.
They're quite active in forestry in Rhode Island.
Okay. Well, and yeah, Chris Modisette has been, I think Christopher mentioned him in the last call as well, so he's definitely gonna get a call from me.
I have a person I can send along too. I recently left the company and went off on my own, so I didn't take her with me because she was them before and I felt uncomfortable. But I'd feel comfortable reaching out to her, and if she feels fine with me sharing the number. But she retired about 4 years ago from maybe 5 from FSA Holden. So
Okay.
she might be, she's looking for work.
Okay, well, great. Send her away. Or I can, yeah, send her away.
I just wanted to say, I think Hayden's the most popular name on the call today, so I see.
I know, it's a little shocking to see
Yeah.
3 different Haydens there.
Holy moly.
This is Nancy Stairs with the Division of Forest Environment. We're doing some things and applying for some IRA money, so maybe it'd be good to be aware of that. We have some IRA funding for outreach to underserved according to a specific definition by the Stewardships Program. And we're working with the Pocasset Pokanocket Land Trust to do that outreach. And we're in the process of applying for some funds for the IRA climate resiliency application process. It's due the end of the month. Looking for some funds for specifically for invasive treatments. So that is something that we'll be doing, but it seems as part of our outreach that we should be connected with this effort with NEF, and probably that could help get some of what you're trying to do in front of some of the people that we want to see that. So that's kind of, and we are looking at, and what our proposal is actually contracting and delivering the service, the assessment, the plan, and the treatment to the landowner, but they do not receive the funds, and it would be 100% cost share. So that's kind of what we're looking at, just so in case whether you guys want to have a further discussion about what we're doing and how we might align this. You know, that could be something that might be helpful.
That would be great, Nancy, to connect with you and talk some more about that.
Sure,
So, thank you.
great.
Okay,
Is
well,
direct or landowner outreach going to be a part of your strategy, or is it really more through foresters and folks who they're working with?
Both and all of the above, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
We do have funding for some active outreach, but as you can see, we're kind of building this program as we go, and it's been a kind of a phased process. As I said, this year we spent a lot of time focusing on the commercial landowners in Maine to get them kind of a first round of projects up and running, so they could be implemented, seasonally appropriate times. So we're in the process now of focusing more on the smaller woodland owners in southern New England. And I think we're going to be phasing in. So it's, as Hayden was saying, kind of a soft launch this fall, as soon as we can get foresters trained and get everything on the website. And then I think as we get into 2025, we'll be starting to look at more active outreach efforts based on what we need to do. As mentioned, we've worked with certain landowners more so in Connecticut than Rhode Island, I think, directly, but you all will, I think, will help us identify people that this program would be a good fit for, so we can reach out to them first. And then if we need to do mailings or kind of more intensive efforts as we move forward, we certainly will. And open to your suggestions on other tactics that you think have been useful or effective. So,
Yeah, Bob, I see your hand.
Yeah, quick question on the smaller parcels of woodlands and also the urban parcels of woodlands. A lot of times that falls into the category of tree services end up doing the work on there. If loggers end up doing the work or tree service, either way, what's the compensation rate, or how would the, how would that be scaled, towards the work?
So we're using NRCS rates for the practices. We're trying to pair NRCS practices with ours, and we're using that because most of the forestry work has come out on bid. So it's been really challenging to find, like, this practice costs this much. So we're using NRCS rates. The minimum landowner size we're going for is 10 acres. We're going to be requiring a forest management plan for the plots because we don't want to just go and do a practice and have this be something that nobody's ever going to touch again. So that does create some constraints, and maybe that size limitation might, maybe that wouldn't be as much arborists and things like that. But also, that's one of the questions we have is who's going to be doing this work? Because, Southern New England doesn't have a robust logging industry. So, tree workers, anything like that, whoever, or even if the landowner wants to do the work themselves, we're going to be compensating the practitioner. So almost, not that it doesn't matter who does it, but
Sure.
yeah, we'll be able to do that. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Caleb, you had your hand up? You're on mute.
Thank you. I was just trying to get my hand down. Yeah. So I just wanted to flag that since I may run out of time to email you both, I run Maisie's Tree Farm, maisiestreefarm.com. Certainly reach out to me. I have a 23-acre woodlot, and I'd love to see if it's something that would work for you guys. Zero issues if it doesn't, but I'm very interested in what you're doing. And I just, with that last comment, I think that's a really good point. That's especially if nobody has experience with the benefits of forestry, they get nervous when they see something that you would like, the equipment you associate with a logging crew. They get nervous and they feel like it's not good for the forest, even though it is. And I'm a licensed arborist. I know some other arborists who, I don't know, just to throw that in the conversation, that if somebody just to open the door and, do like a tiny clearing, a logger isn't going to want to touch that. But if you establish, it doesn't have to be me. I've got no skin in the game, but arborists, I think, are a great resource in Rhode Island with so many small woodlots. You can have a bunch of independent arborists who are familiar with equipped practices that can go in and do for pretty cheap, do some snags, do a small clearing, and it's not going to be something it's financially fine for them, where it'd be insulting for a logging company, because they have to bring in a harvester. So those two thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially for things like fixing high grades where you might not have logs that are coming out of the forest, I think arborists would be, if you can fell a tree and you can, work with a forester, that's great. That would be wonderful. So it's a good point.
And Caleb, I just wanted to make sure, is it Nate's? What the name of your firm?
No, yeah. So I was hesitant because I'm really not into self-promotion, but since you asked, okay. So it's Maisie's Tree Farm. So MAISEY''S. Oh yeah, Kate just put it in the chat. That's great. Tree, TRE.
Thank you.
Farm. Yeah.
Maisie's Tree Farm. Got it. Okay. Thanks a lot. I couldn't quite hear it.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. That was a pretty robust discussion. I hope it was helpful, Hayden and Lisa.
Yeah.
If there are not any further questions, we are going to head into partner updates. You are more than welcome to stick around if you want to find out what we're all doing, but feel free to hop off if you have another place to be. Thank you again so much for being here today to give this presentation, and it's great to hear about the work you're doing. Well, we'll all be doing it together.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your feedback too. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'll probably stay on in the background, just listen in, but I'm gonna stop my video after this. So thank you all.
Awesome. Well, it is the time in our meeting for partner updates, and after we discuss what we're all up to, we'll talk about our October Woodland Partnership meeting. So does anyone have any updates? Bob does.
I do. So October 19th is our second annual Log a Load for Kids fundraiser for Hasbro Children's Hospital. I wanted to bring that point up. Last year, our fundraiser was a North American record breaker for the amount of money we raised the first time. It was the most in North America ever. Log load is up to over $70 million now raised for the Children's Miracle Network Hospital. And next week, my wife and I will be going to California for the annual meeting of American Loggers Council in California.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else have an update?
Bob, do you have a flyer you can like post in the, where can he post that? Is in the chat? Yeah, in the chat, you can post the link to your flyer or the document somehow.
Or even just
About-
put the website in the chat, that would be extra helpful.
All right, so again, excuse me for not being too tech savvy.
I can find it. I got it. I got you covered.
Thank you.
Do you have a website? Is it linked to a website, Bob?
Yeah, so it's P2P one cause / log a load.
That's specific to your event?
That's correct. That'll bring you right to Hasbro, and that'll bring, excuse me. Sorry about that.
Okay.
That'll bring you right to Hasbro, and then that'll bring you to a menu or the page itself. If you click on the menu, you can buy tickets or you can donate, but it tells you all about it on that P2P one cause / log a load.
This is what the flyer looks like, Kate, if you're looking for it.
Thanks, Mark.
As a matter of fact,
I have it.
I don't
but
know, would that work if people like zoomed in on this Q code? They could go right to it.
Christopher posted it in the chat.
Oh, you found it.
There you go. I had a hard time there, but we figured it out. Thanks, Christopher.
Thanks, Chris.
Good
Appreciate it.
thing.
If I can find out where the chat's, I'd be all set.
You're good. I can give a quick update. We're smack dab in the middle of Land Trust Days. That's our 2-month celebration of land trusts and people getting outside in the state of Rhode Island. So far, we have about 50 events planned. We're going to be somewhere around 80. If you're interested, I'm going to put our website in the chat. You can join our meetup group, and we have multiple events on land trust properties happening every week. A bunch on the weekends. So check it out. Anybody else?
Yeah, I can do an update. Working on a couple of things that might be of interest. One is, and we've talked about this before, we have a grant from the Conservation Stewardship Collaborative to kind of look into the forest mapping that's part of the Wildlife Action Plan. And it's been interesting. Those maps of rare forest types, nobody quite knows where those came from. Christopher, did you do the mapping for the? No, nobody knows where those maps came from. And we've been out, and so we contracted Paul Miller, who some of you may know, and he's been out for a couple of weeks now, going to some of those sites and seeing what's actually there. And they're, as I suspected, they're not super good. And so he's trying to make provide an assessment of the situation with those maps, and then to improve them as best he can with the time that we have available on that grant. But this is, I think, really important because a lot of the mapping products we have, nobody really understood them, and it meant that we couldn't use them for Forest Conservation Commission or FHWP projects. So getting better mapping products or understanding the limits of the ones we have will be really important for making better use or making better decisions out there. So that project is going forward, and there should be some interesting results. The biodiversity database, Survey's biodiversity database project, the Boris project, which some of you are on our group of advisors, know that we have a contractor. We're nearing the end of the first phase, and hopefully by the end of the month, we will have the first phase done, and we'll have basically a roadmap forward for the development of a prototype of this biodiversity database, which will also manage the natural heritage data. And so that's gone really smoothly. we have a contract with a company called Blackburn Labs, which is actually out of North Kingstown. And they've been terrific, and I'm really pleased with how that project's gone so far. And that's funded by the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program. So that project's going along. And then we've started working on the Wildlife Action Plan. Amanda Freitas has encouraged the survey to take a lead on the plants and some of the key habitats, which will include the rare forest types. You know, to really do the job is way outside the amount of time capacity the survey has right now, but we'll do the best we can. Our data clerk, George Christie, has been developing some tables on some of these things, and I may be reaching out to some of you for to tap your expertise on certain things related to plants, natural key habitats, and some of the invertebrates, terrestrial invertebrates. And then lastly, some of you know that we got a grant from the One Hive Foundation to develop a plant insect community network, which is really sort of a networking opportunity for people who have pollinator projects, who are working on pollinator adjacent projects. And that can include not just pollinator conservation and inventory, but also pollinator plantings and different practices that are designed to promote pollinator diversity and pollinator health. And so we have Casey Johnson is the coordinator of that. She's one of Steve Alm's former students here at URI, who's doing a statewide inventory of bees, and she's also going to coordinate the Plant Insect Community Network. We'll be rolling that out in the next few weeks, and anybody who wants to become a member of the network, it doesn't cost anything. You just have to let us use your organization's name in the list of members, and then you'll get invitations to our events that are essentially, they're designed to be mixers for people who are working on pollinator adjacent projects. There are so many in the state, and they attach to the sort of issue of pollinators in so many different ways. Nobody knows what's going on. So we're going to try to get people together for mixers, and we had 2 field trips this summer to pollinator plantings in Providence, to go look at those and just chat about meet each other and chat about what we do. And so we're going to start recruiting. You know, we have sort of our core group of pollinator projects that helped us write the grant, and we'll be recruiting more members for the network, and we'll be doing some things over the next 12 months to bring people together. I guess that's it for my updates.
So I'll share one update. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, Paul Dolan with the RCD Council. We're having our COVID-1 program again. This year it's going to be November 9th. It's going to be at the Senior Center in Situate. So it's going to be very intro on it. We've lowered the price down to $10 per person. If you or any of your clients are interested, please contact me. Right now, we have plenty of space. The other thing I'd like to mention is the Aviathon this year will be dealing with, for a special topic, on forest resiliency. So anyone who would like to participate, please contact me, and we're more than happy to have people to help. We're looking for always judges, speakers. It's always a new topic, and it's a new adventure. So if anyone's interested, please contact me. Thank you.
Paul, if you want to just have Joanne send me the flyer for coverts, I can share it in our e-news.
That'd be great, yes. You can send it to the RIFCO.
RIFCO is it's kind of our quiet time. We had our summer program over there at the Hillsdale Preserve with Christopher leading the way to show us his study plots there and the plantings. Had a half decent turnout, typical. Our next project is going to be helping out with the Rhode Island Tree Farm Program's fall tour, which is going to be at our friend Tom Angel's property in Situate on October 26th. We're going to recognize some of the 25 and 50-year tree farmers that are in the state. Paul Roselli. Geez, you got Burrillville Land Trust has a long time tree farm there, more than 50 years now.
Yeah, close to 100.
Yeah, well, getting there because 59, I think, is the
59.
year that those
Yeah,
went in.
59. So
75 years anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a Forest Conservation Commission meeting coming up that was scheduled. Thank you, Kate. Any idea what's on the agenda? We did the most important forest definition.
Yeah.
We've tackled old growth definitions. What's next on our agenda?
Well, that's so funny that you mentioned that. I have been meaning to follow up with TJ this week. So thank you for reminding me. We will know soon enough what is on that agenda.
Okay.
And I think part of it is making sure that we have feedback from DEM on, like, the way I understand it is we come up with the definitions and then they approve. So maybe that's what we're talking about. It's been a while since we've met and I was not at the last meeting, so.
Yeah.
I probably should have mentioned that we are hosting the Land Trust Alliance, which is the National Land Trust Organization, in Providence next week, and we'll have over 2,300 people descending on Providence to talk about land and water conservation. It's very exciting times here in Providence.
Isn't the National Association of State Foresters meeting, is that this week or
That
next?
is at the beginning of next week, and ours is at the end of next week.
Oh, so they're
we
both
are
the same
just-
week.
Oh yeah. Just,
Flat
you know.
out.
NAF will be there at LTA rally too.
Yay!
We'll see
Woo!
you there.
And if we are hosting lunch at Malted Barley on Friday, if anyone wants to come, I can send you the link. $25, but all you can eat and hang out with friends from Rhode Island. Anyway, Melissa, do you have any NRCS updates?
I will just mention that we are having a really early round of funding this year. So October 4th is our first application deadline. It's super early. I'm sure we'll have another one in the winter, but and so the October 4th deadline is applications for EQIP, for CSP, for Forest Health Works, the RCPP Forestry Easement Program, for our Ag Land Easement Program, Wetland Reserve Easement Program. So pretty much everything. If you know anybody that is looking for funding, then October 4th would be their best chance of getting funding for this year. I think that's it.
Wow. What about you, Scott? Any big updates from Audubon?
Well, we just installed over 750 plants at a founder's plot. These don't grow in the forest except for the one species, so I didn't want to mention it. But this is a program that's called Reseeding Rhode Island that Rhode Island Wild Plant has done. So we agreed to be the host site, surrogate mom and dad of these species, which are then grown for a year. They collect seed if they reproduce, and then they can be used on restoration and conservation sites. Because we all know, any of us who are into restoration, it's hard to find local ecotypes. So this is a big effort that many agencies have tried over the years.
Thanks, Scott. Nancy, do you have any additional updates on what's going on with your outreach programs or anything else?
Well, we do have stuff going on, a fair bit of contracts and applications. We're in discussion with Connecticut they want to apply for an LSR to do some understory thinning and heavy beach understory to test several replications of different densities to see if that makes any kind of difference with beach leaf disease, since there's no, approach or treatment for management of that in forest sites. So that's an application that Connecticut is doing. So we've been involved with that. We're working with the PPLT on this new project that I mentioned for a cost share program, which we've never been able to do because we don't have any state funding. So that ties well with the existing outreach IRA funding that we have also with PPLT to reach out to underserved landowners. Now the stewardship program has changed, updated its underserved landowner list. So people in specific poverty identified counties, which we don't have landowners of veterans, specialty products, and less than 10 years. So several things. There's no minority or things like that, but I suspect that we'd have a lot of BIPOC or minority people that would fall in that, and as well federally recognized tribes. So that's going to tie together. We've Mark RIFCO has given us a support letter as a potential partner, and NRCS as well. We also have a new MOA agreement with NRCS, so that was just executed this month, which simply lays the groundwork, formalizes the basis for the possibility of working together on projects, or in the case of NRCS, possibly providing funding for some things. We don't know yet, because right now we're still kind of swimming in trying to figure out how we're gonna, implement and use some of these funds. We are still working on the best management plan, so that might be news to some of you. Fern decided that it was important to get something out the door, so we are actually have the field guide to the designers, so she's working on that now. So that Carrie's usually a pretty quick worker, so I'm hoping we'll have something we can look at and look to edit or refine maybe in another 3 or 4 weeks. So one of the things would be possibly looking to improve some of the graphics or that kind of thing. So we will be in touch after that. You're
This
raising
is
your finger?
the wetland BMP.
Yeah, forestry practices and water quality. So, and then we'll work backwards and we'll do a larger guide that will be available online. We're also going to have a landowner's guide to forest management planning. So that's that'll be something else that she'll be designing. Just trying to think what else we have. It's just
That's a lot.
Yeah, we are going to be and we're working to set up a contract. We are going to be hiring a contract person, hopefully, to assist with the outreach for the stewardship program, as well as tied to potentially with this, if we get this funding. We are only asking for, you can ask for up to 5 million for the climate resiliency project. We are only asking for 1.5. We just don't, we just don't want to get in too deep. But we would be working to do the invasive assessment, and so we'd have a person that would be based out of here, working with Fern and also with Legacy and that kind of aspect. So that's another contract I'm starting with. We're also setting up a contract with David. Thank you very much, David, for a forest health technical person to assist Alana Russell. She's got a lot of initiatives and things going on, and so we're looking to get something set up. We scraped together some funds from some of this federal money that we've been getting, and going to try expand our capacity. We also have, what else? Well, the dirt to trees to wildlife, Fern is more up to date on that, but certainly, David, what you were talking about with some of that mapping for those community types and species. I think that'll come into play. I believe URI and NRCS will work together this summer to do some soil pits, to do some refining. And so this project will continue to move on. I think our next steps will be the forestry component, and then it'll be the wildlife. So hopefully we'll have something to start to discuss more as, you know, as we round the corner into fall, winter. I think that's mostly it.
All right, thanks, Nancy. Ian, I don't know if you have an update that you want to share about what you're up to.
Hello, yes, sorry, I can't seem to get my video to work, but yeah, so after a long 4 months of working through the summer, I have finished a full tree inventory of Albro Woods that's on Aquinic Island in southern Rhode Island. And after that survey, I've found that there's around 900 trees in the woods, and after listening to this Woodland partnership meeting for the past hour or so, I've heard beech trees be mentioned a lot, beech leaf disease, and how important it is. And after running a pivot table, I found that Albro Woods has almost 350 beech trees within it. So I think that makes it a pretty unique patch of woods when people start thinking about how we're going to start treating these beech trees in Rhode Island and management practices and things like that. So yeah, more to come. I'm going to be processing the data and trying to get some reports and ARC maps. And I heard the issues with mapping and things like that. I'll have a full map of Albro Woods with the trees, their GPS coordinate, and things like that. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Ian. Paul, I don't know if you're still here. Paul Roselli, do you have any Barville updates from your neck of the woods?
No updates in terms of forest. We're gearing up for the rally field trip. We're the only landlocked organization that's doing a trip along Narragansett Bay, and we're looking forward to it. We're going to take looks like about 20 people from Providence in the ferry all the way to Newport. Along the way, we've got Emily Howe from Clean Water Action. We've got Jed Thorpe from Save the Bay, and we got John Trogan from the Nature Conservancy as our guides and experts to tell these wonderful people. They're coming from all over. As you know, Rally draws people. We have somebody from Hawaii. No idea why they're coming all the way here. None at all, but they're coming. And we have people all throughout New England. I think we should have Rally every year.
In Providence? How about every 10 years?
Providence.
That cycle
Providence.
seems
Every
fine
year.
to me.
Every year in Providence.
Oh,
10 years. You know, this is my third field trip.
yeah.
So you can do the math, right? You can
Oh,
do the math.
4, 14,
10 years,
24, Paul, I got him. I
30
know.
years.
Yep.
30 years. All right, that's enough. See ya. Bye.
Thank you. I think that's everybody. I think we've heard from everyone in the group. Christopher, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I do have just a couple of updates, but on the following up on the guides are working on developing a natural resource professionals guide to managing forests for climate resiliency in Rhode Island. Been working on that with Nancy and some of the staff members from the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. We've been adapting a guide that was first developed for Massachusetts, specific to Rhode Island, climate projections and the landscapes, that we have here. It's a follow-up to the landowner's guide. I think many of you are familiar with now, but it's a longer, even larger, sort of more robust guide, suitable for professionals. You do work with NRCS as a TSP or a planner. It's going to be integrated into a couple of upcoming trainings. Might even be featured at an upcoming Woodland partnership meeting, but hopefully we'll be distributing that within a month. We'll be co-leading a session on forest climate adaptation for land trusts at Raleigh with NIAC staff and Erica Rowland of the Greater Lovell Land Trust, cut up on the New Hampshire Maine border. So look forward to seeing who's coming to that one, and the other familiar faces will be at Raleigh. That's all for now.
Sorry about that, Christopher. Thank you for the update.
No worries.
Our next Woodland Partnership meeting is scheduled for October 17th, which is our normal third Thursday of the month time, and it is a field trip. We are planning on heading out to Phil Hauser's property in Foster, and we're going to learn about his sawmill and his conservation easement that's partially held by DEM and partially held by Providence Water. So we'll get a bit of a field tour and also see what's cooking in Phil's mill. So mark your calendars. It's going to be a good one, and we'll send out an update in a couple weeks. If there aren't any additional updates, I will begin the meeting. What do you say? All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See you all.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks, and see you out there.